I believe there's such a beauty in being honest in interview. I tell females, if you want to be in leadership, make sure they know it in an interview. If you want to be a remote worker so you can travel around the globe, say it in the interview so that everything is on the table there. Having it up front creates such a better relationship to achieve it versus like trying to find that remote job and then like skirt around systems, because then it also makes things uncomfortable with like coworkers because you don't feel like you can be truly and authentically yourself.
Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I'm your host, Jolene on the Go, solo female traveler and creative entrepreneur. Think of me as your skydive instructor, empowering you to take the leap into solo travel to push past your fears and transform your life. Join me every Tuesday as we explore the world of solo travel with purpose and discover how you can use it for your personal transformation, learn how to make meaningful connections around the world, and reignite your spirit of play. We aren't just talking about traveling to find ourselves anymore. We're all about doing the work to understand who we authentically are, breaking through our limiting beliefs, and taking the leaps to manifest lives we are excited about. Through interviews, solo episodes, and meditations, each episode is packed with practical tips, strategies, and inspiring stories from guests who have transformed their lives through solo travel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting out on your journey, the Travel Not to Escape podcast is here to inspire and empower you to solo travel with purpose. Strap on your helmet. We're about to jump headfirst into the journey of a lifetime. Are you ready? Let's go. Do you want to know how to make friends while solo traveling? This question comes up so often and is a big one that holds so many women back from traveling. And I'm so excited to share that I'll be hosting a free workshop on January 24th, and I'm spilling all of my connection secrets. Hard learned from over 10 years of solo traveling, hosting travel meetups, play events, and chatting with other solo travelers on this podcast. Spaces are limited, so save your seat on travelnottoscape.com/free class, and I'll also link it in the show notes. See you there. Welcome, navigators, to another episode of Travel Not to Escape. I am so very excited to introduce you to our guest today, Megan Williamson, who is one of my dear friends who I met in Chicago. And I have her on here today because she's just one of my most favorite and inspiring people. And I think her story is really going to resonate with a lot of you. She is a badass woman who has built her career in sales, and she is also a digital nomad. So I'm excited to have her on here today. We're going to talk about her story of transformation, solo travel, how she's balanced a corporate sales career and full-time travel, and how to make and maintain meaningful connections around the world. Welcome, Megan.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yay! And the question that I start my conversations with everyone is, I want to get to know you first through what you like to do as a child. So what was your favorite childhood activity?
I'm very thankful you gave me a heads up on this question about a week or so ago. Because I probably would have started off with I would have just loved to play outside, ride my bike, stuff like that. If anyone knows me, I don't sit still well. But in probably that minute that's in your head as you think about it, I thought back to sewing as my favorite childhood activity. And I know it probably sounds silly, sewing as a child. And I don't even know what sparked it, but very independent person where as probably 6 or 7 years old, I was like, I want to learn how to sew. So I literally went and took a roll of paper towels out of my kitchen and decided I was going to teach myself how to make pillows. So I literally folded and made them into perfect squares. I started with pillows. It seemed like an easy thing to do. I was horrible at threading the needle, so I'd always have to go to my dad and ask him to thread the needle for me. Oddly enough, he never asked what I was doing with the needle and thread and would just go off. And so
normal kid things.
Yeah, normal kid things. No questions asked. And so for the first holidays, as a little kid, you don't really get presents for your family and stuff. I decided I colored and I sewed everyone individual pillows for the holidays. And that kind of led me into things. Led me into making my own clothes as a kid and a teenager. My mom's best friend, she would go over and have tea at our house. She had a whole sewing studio and would just give me a bunch of fabric and they would sit and have tea. And by the end of their tea, I would come upstairs, like fashion show, no, like the whole thing, like probably 5 to 6 different pieces. There was dresses, there was skirts, there was
Oh,
tops.
wow.
And yeah, shocking, I know.
Yeah. Very
So, but
shocking.
yeah. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that was like my favorite childhood, like thinking back on it, reflecting that, like just as something that brought me so much joy to do.
Yeah, and as you are describing that, I see you lit up even just thinking about it, right? And that's like the really what I want to inspire in other people is just getting back into that sense of play where you were doing something because it made you happy and you didn't even know why. I'm already thinking in terms of your play styles, like definitely creativity, right? Because you were coming up with these designs yourself, you were finding things and putting them together and learning how to sew. But there's actually an aspect also of a director play style of coordinating the event, planning out the everything essentially, and even like hosting the event, the fashion shows for your family and what that looked like. So there's kind of like two play styles that are being incorporated just in that one activity. And it's interesting to see now that we know about you, how that leads into your current life and how you've transformed since then. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. So let's dive into your background. I want to, and I don't even know if I really know all of the details of the past, but let's dive into your background. I want to start from the very beginning. If you could tell me your background, where you're from, and how you started solo traveling.
Yeah. So funny enough, I was just talking to a friend about this the other week and realizing how ambiguous I am. So I grew up
Oh,
just
yeah, I know
outside
this.
of Atlanta. Yes, you do know this. I grew up just outside of Atlanta. And so I grew up in the South and everything like that. However, I spent the last bit of my adulthood before solo traveling in Chicago. So it's always funny when I meet people and they're like, where are you from? And it's this weird, I'm like, do I say Atlanta? But I haven't lived there in 7+ years. Or do I say
Mhm.
Chicago? But I haven't lived in Chicago for 3 years. And then as I talk to people and they're like, but wait, you don't have a Southern accent. You don't have a Midwest accent. And then I had to explain, well, I spent my summers in New England with my grandparents. And so my background is still, it feels like I'm never from just one place. So kind of an influence of those three, I would say, is where I would say from. If anyone knows
Mhm.
me, I always say when everyone asks like where home is, I always say myself. I am my own home. I've said that probably way before I was even solo traveling. So that might have an influence of into my solo travel. The defining moment of solo travel probably came for like a lot of people in the past few years was in COVID.
Mhm.
I can't say other than like spending my summers in the Northeast with my grandparents, like I traveled much as a kid. Not until I graduated high school did I go like what I say like truly international. I did a cruise once as a kid, but very young. I graduated high school and my mom had saved up for me to be able to go to Paris on like your school trip and stuff like that. And I absolutely loved it. I was always very intrigued by just like people and culture and stuff like that. And then I started working in consulting and would have to travel with people and then also ended up randomly having to travel by myself for work. And the first time I did it, I decided I am never going to eat a meal in my hotel room. It was a rule I set, even if
Nice.
I was in the middle of nowhere, which happened plenty of times in the United States where you're
Yeah.
just like, is there even a restaurant around me? Like, where am I?
Yeah.
Is it safe to do that?
Yeah, those fun consulting projects for sure.
Yes. I ended up meeting probably some of the most random people. My rule was to always, if there was a bar, go sit up at the bar, even if I wasn't drinking, but just to be able to interact with the bartender or you have the tendency to talk to people around you. And so with that, I definitely started traveling more. Thank you, Sky Miles, from that job. Went
Delta
to
Brat.
Delta Brad over here, loyal as can be. I don't think I can break that no matter where I move to. We are Delta all the way. But then I started traveling to like Greece and just other places and just kept getting more and more curious. Started planning trips with girlfriends and really enjoyed it. And then COVID kind of came and it was just like, I had this moment, and you and I had this conversation months prior of
Mhm.
just like, what would life look like if we didn't have an apartment? And if
Yeah.
anyone knows me, I'm an all-in type of person, 0 to 100. There is no middle ground. So you know what? Sold 90% of the stuff and decided we are just cannonballing into this solo lifestyle. And I laughed and told my mom, I was like, who knows? Back to office might happen. It might only be 3 months, 6 months. And she laughed and she goes, minimum a year. Minimum. And it will be 3 years coming up soon.
I know. Oh my God, the time just flies by so much.
It does.
Yeah, I think when we first started this journey, and for the listeners out there, it was, around COVID time, and Megan and I had met in Chicago. We were both in, office, high rise, do the whole city life, go to the happy hour, do the networking events, like have all the friends and, do that. Like, I guess I would call it more of a typical success path. And we both got to that point where it was like, oh, okay, is this it? Like,
we were like, this can't be it. This can't be it. Like, and this can't be what peak is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you could see your future, right? You could see your future of like, okay, I keep climbing up this corporate ladder and I keep going out to drink and to the events. But then it's like, oh, is this what the next 40 years, how many years do we have left to live? Is this it?
Yeah. It was like, trust me, I was like, I'm the girl. I was like, I still love doing my steak dinners and martinis. I love my city life, but it just got to the point I was like, I moved to Chicago with the smallest U-Haul possible, but everything was fit for the apartment that I got, and was just like, I built all of this, like everything I had. I was like, I earned it. I got to this point, but then I was just like, okay, well, I did this. What next? I love having something to do and a challenge. And then I was just like, well, if this is it, I'm going to get bored, and that's never a good thing. And so it's just kind of that moment. It's just like, well, if I did it once, I can do it again. So why not see what else there is to offer?
Yeah. And as you were, even like before you went full nomad, were there moments when you were traveling for consulting or traveling on trips where you felt challenged being by yourself, having to go and, travel on your own? Or was it always something that was a little bit more natural for you?
I think for me, it's definitely more natural. And I know that's not for everyone, and I'm very mindful of that. I had a big in college that joked and said I could charm a brick wall and it would become my friend. And so I always explain, and even when I talk to people in interviews and stuff like that, I was like, I'm just a curious person. I'm very curious about life and about people. I think you've even said it. There's plenty of times I've been left alone and someone's like, oh, should we go check on Meg? And you're like, nope, she probably already has a group of friends. And you walk out and I'm talking to people. So for me, I think having curiosity just kind of like added fuel to the fire with it.
Yeah. And it's like stepping into a life of ambiguity as a nomad, I'm sure was like, oh,
Yes.
I wonder what that looks like.
Yes. All the curiosities happen in my head.
Yes. Okay, so you've done it differently than I have. So, like for listeners, we actually started nomading together, doing it in the U.S., and eventually made our way to Mexico because you had a bachelorette party that you're like, oh, let's do a week. So a week turned into 5 weeks, turned into 6 months for me.
Yes. I left you in Mexico.
You left me in Mexico, and I kept going south until I made it to Argentina. And then you went back to the US back and forth because you continued in this corporate sales career that you have still built up. And so I want to ask, like, though we're both nomads, it's very different because of the type of work that we do. And so how has it been having a corporate sales career in tech and balancing the full-time nomad lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. If anyone knows me and if anyone ever talks to me, I always say, like, you can be both. You can do both. You can be creative and structured and stuff like this. And it's funny when I meet a lot of people and they're just like, wait, how do you do that? Aren't you so tempted to just like always be in vacation mode or like going to this thing and this thing? And for me, I think there's a uniqueness that comes with having to stay very disciplined and realizing like this is a lifestyle choice. This is not you're on permanent vacation. And there's a lot of acknowledgement that needs to go into that. And also a lot of of like missing out on things. Like FOMO is a real thing, but like those are two things to balance being a nomad and then still having a corporate, like to me is being okay with FOMO and having like an extreme amount of discipline.
Yeah, that's those two things are ones that definitely take me personally off course. let's dive into the discipline piece because, yeah, you are traversing different time zones. You are
Mhm.
also, as I know, you travel pretty fast in comparison too, because you're traveling like once a month or even every few weeks, depending on the location. So, what does discipline look like for you if you are somewhere new and having to work?
Yeah, so I think I try to slow it down. Unfortunately, there's some things like friends' weddings. There's 50 billion this year, and I love them all. That shorten some of my timeline places. My goal next year is no one please get married so that I don't have to weave that into my schedule. But basically, I think for me, I try to at least give everywhere a month because a month does go by very quickly. I think you and I learned that
Mhm.
when we first started doing this, and we're like, we're going to go through a different state every
Cities every
month.
month.
And then
Yeah.
it's exhausting to do that. So, like, my advice to people is at minimum a month. When people see that I move sometimes 2 to 3 weeks pretty quickly because of work or because, like, that is not my advice. I'm a high energy person that can handle that. That is not what I recommend. So I always say give somewhere a month because you can create a routine in that month. You can have discipline in that month and still be able to have down days, but then also days that you really enjoy, whether it's doing the touristy things. If you meet people and there's some dance thing on a mountain that goes all night and you're exhausted the next day, it's okay because you have enough time to like give yourself that moment to like equalize again. So I always say like that is my best advice I can give is that at minimum a month.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I've slowed it down to like 3 to 6 months, like really slowed it down
That's the
because
most ideal. If you love a
yeah.
place, 3 months, 3 to 4 months is amazing.
It's
But
perfect,
if you
yeah.
don't like a place, you don't want to be stuck there for 3 to 4
Yeah,
months. So the
exactly.
caveat to it.
And and do you find, how has work been receptive or maybe not receptive to you traveling full time? Like, what are those conversations like?
Yeah, so it was interesting when I first started doing this because obviously I was in the States and stuff like that. And they were pretty open to it, I think, especially with just like COVID happening. It was, everyone was kind of everywhere, people were stuck places. So they were kind of okay with it. When I started to push the boundaries and probably go a little more international, I think I got a saving grace because I was the top performer at that company. And they were just like, okay, well, she's doing it there. Also, like, even though I was out of the country, I was still in normal time zones and having to take calls at 2 or 3 in the morning with Asia and stuff like that. So I got a lot of grace that was given to me when I kind of like tested the waters with that. And then I was fortunate. I moved from that company to a very global company that has people all around the world. My entire sales team, there's people in Germany, France, London, as well as the East Coast Central Time Zone across the US. And so were my clients. And so for them, when they recruited me, it was kind of already part of the package that I'm all over the place. And then for a lot of them, they realized there was some benefits to it because like you don't end up working this like structured 9 to 5, especially
Mhm.
being in sales. Any salesperson knows you to be successful, you really do have to own your own calendar. So for me, when I was living in Cape Town, I would have a couple hours in the morning, I would have my coffee, see some friends, go log on, talk to a lot of the clients I was working with that were in the UK because they were just a couple hours behind me. So I would be able to have like conversations with them in their peak times versus at like the end of their day when they're like tired and just want to go home. Then I would go off and enjoy a lot of my day. There was times I went like paragliding with friends, or we went to the ocean for a swim, or I did like a surf lesson or something like that. And then as the evening time came, I would log back in, speak to a lot in the US and stuff like that. Or when I had downtime of just like didn't want to go do anything, like is when I would catch up on emails and stuff like that. So it really gave me a chance to have that and was able to show it with a lot of organizations where it was beneficial. There was one I was talking to just the other day, and they were just like, they were asking a little bit about like what does like the Nomad or remote, because of course they're just like, well, if we wanted you to be in California the next day, that's kind of hard, and one that's hard for
Mhm.
just most people and just given everyone
Yeah.
has hectic lives. But earlier in the call they had mentioned they were just in a country in Europe, and if they could have stayed longer, they would have had so many more meetings with potential clients. So I brought it back to them, and I was just like, sometimes it's good having someone nomadic on there, because guess what? I could have stayed and kept the meetings and that energy going versus y'all having to take time when you're flying back to the States and not have that in-person interaction.
Yeah.
So with all that, I'm very fortunate with the two companies I was at. I think we're at a pivotal point where some companies are wanting people back in the office.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not a huge component of that. I think it's great having spots for people to come and collaborate, but forcing people. But then there needs to be an open-mindedness to what are the possibilities and giving people that freedom and that control as long as there's trust there.
Yeah, I think that's so important because, as you mentioned, there are benefits. And if you're so keyed in on just like wanting people in the office for the sake of keeping up the traditional office structure, then you miss out on some of the key benefits of having the flexible person that can continue those relationships. Because really in business, it's all about relationships, especially in sales, it's all about relationships. Yeah. And in person in an office might actually be a detriment if you need in person at a client site.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what would be your top tip for women who are looking for a remote position to be able to live a similar lifestyle, balancing traveling full time and a corporate career? What would be your top tip as they search for these types of roles and have these conversations?
Look for the companies that do say remote first, not just in their job description, but actually like, in the job title that just says location remote. Like actually look for a company that it's part of their values. There's a couple that I know that are truly remote first. When I was talking to the CRO at a company, he was just like, what's it like working in the evenings? And I was like, sometimes I enjoy it. I get a beautiful day at the beach versus waiting for the weekend. And sometimes the weather's bad. And, waiting for his response, he goes, because he was in London, a lot of his team was in Chicago, and he goes, honestly, I'm the same way. Sometimes it's nice because you're so focused and getting work in. So my thing is look for the companies that have that type of culture, not just in that like job description, but in their leadership team. And also be honest about it. I think that's the biggest thing is so many people try to be like, oh, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to just work a little bit. And like they try to tiptoe around it. And if anyone knows me, I think like truth is anything in all relationships and work is a relationship. So if you are being honest about it, especially as at an interview stage, way before as nomadic, I believe there's such a beauty in being honest in interview. I tell females, if you want to be in leadership, make sure they know it in an interview. If you want to be a remote worker so you can travel around the globe, say it in the interview so that everything is on the table there. Having it up front creates such a better relationship to achieve it versus like trying to find that remote job and then like skirt around systems, because then it also makes things uncomfortable with like coworkers because you don't feel like you can be truly and authentically yourself.
Yeah. And I experienced that because I was honest in my interview process with my last career in tech, and managers were all good during COVID times, of course. But then as things started to open up and people started going back into the office, they asked me to no longer share that I was in Argentina or Mexico or wherever it was in the world I happened to be that week. And then it came to those issues of I don't feel like I'm sharing who I authentically am if my like, what are you doing this weekend? Well, I'm going to go, as you said, like parasail off a mountain, but I can't share that because I'm supposed to be in Chicago where there are no mountains. And so,
not really anywhere you can go paragliding.
Yeah, exactly. So, you have to lie, you have to be inauthentic, you have to avoid those conversations, and it just doesn't make for a very sustainable working condition for you in the long term if you have to hide a integral part of yourself. And for women who are wanting to travel and work at the same time, yes, you can do both, but what's the point in hiding one or the other if this is your life that you're going to live?
Yeah, that's why I always say put it all out on that interview stage. Like interview your manager if you get a chance to do peer interviews, interview them, because you don't want that environment. Like that's the biggest thing to look for. Like the job I'm currently at and stuff, like the sales guys always joke and they're just like, okay, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego today?
Yeah. Yeah, and it just feels lighter if you're able to share just even a little bit about what sparks fire inside you versus like, oh, the weather is, let me look up what Chicago's weather is. Oh, it's cold.
Oh,
today.
It's cold in Chicago. Always your answer for Chicago. It's cold.
It's windy, the
It's,
usual.
it's the Windy City.
Yeah. Let's dive into the agenda, why don't we? Had many of those conversations.
Yes.
You are also one of the people that I look to in terms of sales and just like, really leading that as a force. And to be honest, I have no idea what you do. So
No one does.
no one does. And I think it's time that we demystify what someone in sales actually does. So if you could you tell me what is your day-to-day like what skills, like what you mentioned, having calls with people, reading emails,
Yeah.
like you just sum it up for me and the women out there who are like, oh, maybe I could do a career in sales, but what is that?
It's always such a great question, and my mom's response to what I do is inappropriate. We're not going to put that on a podcast or anything like that, but it is hysterical. If anyone ever chats with me one-on-one, I will give you that answer. Sales it's a relationship game. That's honestly what it is. And I think so many people have such an intimidation, especially females. I had a conversation with a female friend of mine who was looking at potentially a sales role and was just like, I'm so nervous about it. One, you've either had a really bad experience with sales or you've seen those 80s, 90s, early 2000s movies where it is bro culture and all of this, and everyone's mean to each other or out to get each other. And none of that is sales. Let's just go ahead and get that out there. Movies like to have their own thing. Sales it's solving a problem. Yes, you have a product, you have a quota, you have to have a competitive spirit with it. But for you to be good at sales, I think being able to be a good listener, build a relationship, and be consistent are three of the qualities I look for, because a lot is trainable from there. So sales is identifying people that have a problem that you have a solution to, building a relationship with them. And if it's the right fit, moving them through a sales process, helping them through their problems. If it's not a right fit, walking away. That is what I think makes truly salespeople. I know I'm not giving you what I do because I like to change my industries a lot. And so I don't want to get people so focused on well, this is how you sell in this space or this is how you sell in this space. I think if you understand the foundation of sales and that really it is relationship and solving a problem, you can be successful in sales in any industry.
That's a good answer. Also still pretty vague.
I know. We got to leave some mystery there when it comes to my job. Staying with my...
It's what are you actually selling? And as part of that, do you find it, we've had some of these conversations, what is it like being a woman in sales specifically? What are some additional challenges or things that you've had to work through in your situation, being a woman, but also being a woman traveling? And if there's anything that's come up that you've had to work through.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been moments in my career where I was just oh, we're in a boys club. And I know I said that doesn't really exist, but there are some people who have that mentality. I remember I had a leader once, and I know he wasn't trying, and he wasn't my direct leader, but he was a director. And he wasn't trying to come off this way, but it did. And he had told me and stuff. And I was new in the space that I was in. As I said, I like to jump industries and stuff. And was just oh, you send an email, guarantee you they look at your LinkedIn and they're just well, she's pretty. So I'll take a meeting with her. And I was just cool. So not because I crafted a good message, I identified what they were looking for. They're taking a meeting with me. And so there's definitely been moments of that where you're just okay, time to set some boundaries and check this and stuff like that. I think the world is evolving when it comes to females in sales. My first sales job, I worked for a female VP who is a total badass. Sorry if you had to bleep me with that one. And
I said it earlier.
Perfect. True. You did. So I have some saving grace there. And so I think it's changing. I think there are more females stepping up and learning that it doesn't have to be dog eat dog, because there is also a slightly older generation than I am that think there's only room for one female at the table. And you see these organizations. So there's one I think called Chief that is solely focused on females at that VP level and networking and stuff like that are bringing people up. And so to me, being a female in sales is knowing there's still going to be moments where you are going to have to call some people out, and that is okay, but don't ever let anyone side with it. And then as I travel, I think what it's done in a weird way is actually connects you more with people. Because as I have partners at other companies and stuff like that, because people have moved across the globe. There was one when I was just like, oh, I left Prague. I'm actually in France now. I came here to like see one of my best friends and stuff like that. And, you know, they light up because he's French, but has lived in the US and Mexico for the last 15 years. And, you know, just as you asked me about like my childhood, it was something to connect with someone on where he was just like, you had to go do this or do this. And I'm acting like an expert, but I haven't been there in forever. But this has always brought me so much. So really, I think the travel hasn't put distance. It actually brings connections.
Yeah. And that's the thing that people don't realize, especially in a work environment, is that people don't actually want to talk about work. Like, especially in sales, it's like a lot of the meetings I used to have were like, yeah, I know we need to talk about the contract, but like, how are you doing? And also, how's your child? And what are you doing this weekend? And how was that hike that you went on? And people end up buying from you because they like you. Not because, you know, you went through some very detailed, they're going to want the information more just to have the paperwork for. But yeah, as you know.
No one wants an agenda slide. No one wants a corporate presentation. I still think one of my funniest like recorded sales calls, I laughed, and after I got off of it, I sent it to my manager, and I was just like, if you want to hear like the good sales presentation, start at like minute 12. If you want to laugh and hear everything inappropriate, listen to the first 12 minutes. And that's where that relationship was formed and stuff, was just different places we had lived and overlapping. And I won't go into that story because, again, we're not afraid to like toe the line of what probably people deem inappropriate and just like things, or I guess I'll share this story so people don't have their own version of inappropriate. But we were laughing about living in Atlanta and stuff and how bad the traffic is. And we were talking about a road that's called Claremont, and it's horrible when you get stuck on it for traffic in Atlanta. And we both kind of made a face, a client and I, at each other at the name of Claremont, because it both sparked a memory for us, because there's a place in Atlanta called the Claremont Lounge, which is just iconic. Google it. It's a whole thing. And my solutions architect was like, wait, what are y'all, like, what was that look y'all gave each other? And so we tell her, her whole face is in shock as we're describing what this place is. But after that, like, this client and I had the best relationship because we could just like laugh and be silly about like, you know, talking about the Claremont Lounge. And again, like no one was just like, how long have you been in your role? Or here's our agenda. Here's what we do. Here's all of this. It was just being a person first.
Yeah. People connecting with people. And I'm going to have to tag the Claremont Lounge, and I don't know what type of listeners I'll get.
Please do.
I get a whole bunch of new
It's
listeners.
an Atlanta establishment. It's great. 10 out of 10 recommend a stop on your Atlanta travels.
That's a travel tip for everyone.
Yes.
So speaking about, you mentioned this as well, is the only room for one person at the table, specifically one moment at the table. And I know that you're a highly competitive person, but I love your approach to competition. So can you kind of go over like what competition is for you and why that's so different?
Yeah. If anyone knows me, I love a challenge. Give me a goal. I'm going for it. Tell me I can't do anything. I'm going to prove you wrong. I know there's a lot of us out there. My exception, and what I tell everyone and when I talk to people, I am one of the most competitive people you will meet, but I am only competitive with myself. I am never competitive against another female or male, especially in a sales space. Like, if you come to me for help, I am going to help you with whatever problem, close that deal, guide you, anything that I can, because I believe in if you're doing good and I'm doing good, like it's only making things better. Like, I don't want to be the only one at the top. And I can't even remember who said this, but I was watching some probably clip of a TED Talk video and stuff. And this guy was talking about how he used to go hike with his friends. And his goal was always to be like the first one up to the top and like do it the fastest and get it done. And then he got up there and, you know, it's if anyone's ever hiked before, you have this beautiful view and it's gorgeous. And then you look around and then there's no one there with you. So like, why would you want to compete that way versus the other friends of his that were like, keeping pace with each other and like helping the other person up, got to the top, and they all got to take in that experience together and like have conversation and just like enjoyment. But it was a sense of community versus being the one at the top by yourself. And you're just like, okay. So to me, like that I love the way he described it, because I think everyone can visualize that moment. But if you're bringing other people up with you, you get this sense of just like doing it together. Like, you accomplished it. There's no doubting it. But how cool is it to see other people accomplish things with you?
Yeah. And if everyone is, kind of at that same pace and you're bringing each other up, then it's inevitable that you all will make it to that peak to be able to enjoy it together rather than, spend all your energy trying to bring others down so that you can rise up and, as you said, at the very end be lonely. I think that my one exception to that is if you're being chased by a bear, you just got to
Okay,
outrun
well,
the other
might be
person.
I might not trip you, but I'll try to outrun you at that point. You definitely would try to trip me.
No, I just got to outrun one other person. So
Fair. We'll put an exception to that. If a bear's chasing you, just run.
just run, as fast as you can, but compete with yourself in that process.
That's when you try to set your personal best record with yourself.
Exactly. PR. No tripping. You don't want to trip
no
anyone.
Tripping. No tripping.
Yeah. But you just run as fast as you can away the other direction. This is some great advice we can give people. What in terms?
Sorry if anyone knows us, Jillian and I can get the giggles. Great times. Not the first this will probably happen in this podcast, and probably not the last.
No, yeah, especially when we talk about death. You know how I love that.
Morbidly upbeat, guys.
Oh, man. So in terms of making connections, how have you found as you've been traveling, like your most favorite ways of meeting new people?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways. I think not being afraid to go out to dinner by yourself or coffee at yourself. And if you see someone else solo, just like striking up the most random conversation. I've had that happen so many times. So I'm working remotely at a coffee shop and someone just asks like, oh, is the seat next to me open? And sometimes because you're both able to speak the same language, it starts a conversation. Or if you're practicing a new language and like people can hear, I find most people tend to be friendly, especially if you're putting in effort and stuff like that. And that's when there's so many different types of meetups, like Google the city or the country you're in and like digital nomad meetups. There's definitely fun ways to do that. I've lived at a co-living house for digital nomads and met like incredible people that were just fun to hang out with there. Social media is also a beautiful thing. Like, I think especially if you're a female solo traveler, probably a lot of y'all know this. There's groups like Girls of Travel. There's a female solo travel network or like Host a Sister. And then have actually paid off for me. Like one of my friends I'm traveling with now, is very active in Girls of Travel. I am not that active in it. I love reading the posts. I'll make some comments. I'm just not a big poster in it. But one of my friends loves reading it and saw she and I were going to be in the same place and was just like, hi, y'all should meet. I mean, very similar to back in the day when we were both I was moving to Chicago, you were already there and people were just like, social media, y'all two should meet. Yeah. And then being open to meeting people, making friends is very similar to first dates. Some are awkward and you're just like, can this end? Oh my God, like this is just not a friend fit. And that's okay, that's a normal thing. But then also at the same time, there's other moments where if you just lean in and go with it and like you will meet some of the most incredible people along the way.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important is putting yourself out there to just make those connections, finding the avenues that align and that feel good for you. But also the important piece that like you've taught me is filtering and learning to let go, handle rejection, because not everyone you meet as a first date, right? Not everyone you meet is going to be the one or even like the one that's going to be in your life at all. It could just be someone you spend an hour with at a city that you're in for that day. And that is beautiful on its own. You get to be curious and you get to learn about someone and you can assess how that connection made you feel in real time. Did it feel good? Did it feel heavy? Do you want to see that person again? And if the answer is no, you don't have to force something to happen. But sometimes it does end up in some really magical connections. And most of the times it actually does end up in like really beautiful long-term connections.
Yeah. And I think the more you do it, it's easy. You become quicker at identifying who are like the type of people you really jive with, that you know it pretty instantly. Like I was in Cabo, Mexico, and I had met this girl literally once because she was at the same taco space as one of the guys that was also living in the digital nomad house. She wasn't there. She owns her own life coach business, just happened to be there. And so we just started a conversation from being at the same taco place. And then I ran into her at this like musician showcase out in Mexico. And I had invited her to do a Thursday art walk and stuff. And some of the other guys in the house were just like, wait, how long have y'all known each other? And we were just like, pretty quick. He goes, I would have imagined y'all were friends. And we were both like, you can pick up on people pretty quick as you like are solo travelers. Like you're the more you do it, you're not trying to do this like date to have this perfect relationship. You identify very quickly, like, I like this person, their energy's good, I match with them, they're fun to hang out with, or like, this person was really nice, but it's just not the type of person I jive with. And that's okay. And then there's other where you're just like, oh my God, that was so uncomfortable, and like did not enjoy the conversation and like never want to see again. And the more you do it, the quicker you become able to identify that. And it makes meeting people a lot more enjoyable because you're able to make those decisions quick versus feeling like I need to give them more time, maybe this or that. And you get a lot quicker with it.
Yeah, definitely. It's just like the at-bats. As the more that you put yourself out there, the easier it ends up becoming. And the more you're able to trust your intuition in regards to people, you tap into like what it feels like being by yourself, and you know what that feeling is like. And if you have built it enough to where you love being by yourself, you can recognize your own energy. Then when something good comes, you're like, oh yeah, it's amplifying that. That's great. I like that connection. Or if it's something that's just like taking away from your energy, you're like, oh, I feel really depleted, or like, why do I feel so off after this hangout? And it really starts with like getting that wholeness within you, so that you can recognize as well, once you put yourself out there, what are the differences in how you're feeling.
Yeah. Look for people who are just as curious about you as you are about them. That will tell you a lot about people.
Yeah. Reciprocating energy is also really important for sure. Tell me about the co-live that you stayed in. Because you actually have been staying in some co-lives, that encouraged me to do some co-lives here in Bali. So what is that like? What is not living in a co-live like as a nomad? What is living in a co-live like? What are the differences?
Yeah, I like a balance of both. I'm not the type of person that will say like, oh, I'm only going to live in co-lives, or I'm only going to live solo. I think it just kind of depends on what you are needing. So I went to Outside.
What was the name of that?
Outside, yeah. So I think like most people, actually I laugh, like most people are like, how did you hear about Outside? It was, social media is most people's answer. If you remember when you and I were looking at a lot of like WeFunders and stuff, I remember Outside coming up as one that I looked at. So I had just done some research and I really liked their branding and everything like that. And I also looked at reviews. And so to me, that was such a fun experience. I had just been back in the States for a month and was just like, I need to get away. This was a little draining and I needed some me time, but also knowing where I was going in Mexico wasn't like a huge digital nomad like hub. So I was like, let me just try a co-live. As I said, you can do anything for a month. You can set routines. Yeah. So I was like, I can co-live for a month. I did my research. You have a desk in your room and like your bedroom and stuff like that. So I knew I had like private space and everything like that. And it ended up being so much fun. There was, some people who were staying there for almost the whole month. There were some people just in and out for a week and stuff like that. But for me, it ended up being a good time because there was an instant community and there were some people you liked right away. Some you were just kind of like, meh. I can't say there was anyone that I was like, I don't like this person. I don't want to be around them. So that I think was fortunate. But then it was kind of cool where you're just like, the music showcase thing, like two of the guys, I was just like, hey, this seems like something you're interested. I found it. Do y'all want to go? And they were like, yep, we're all in. And so there's kind of like this niceness of having an immediate community to just be like, I'm doing this. Do you want to go with? Like, I wouldn't go about it of just saying like, who's doing stuff? Can I come along? Or like, I'll go to this if y'all want to go to this. Like, still have your independent mindset of like, I'm going to go do this. And see who wants to like join and partake. And then you just end up with cool experiences. Some will be a part of your life and some are just meant to be there for that moment. Yeah. But I don't have a bad thing to say about it.
Yeah. And I love the fact that like, it's not like what I was thinking, which was more of like a hostel style, right? Because at this point we're not doing hostels.
If anyone knows me, I am not a hostel girly at any age of my life. Let's be real.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's nice. It's like if you have your private room and like in all honesty, like when you're traveling, you're not necessarily cooking a lot. And I know you and your girl dinners, I know your the kitchen's not necessary.
The goddess of a girl dinner over here. That's been my whole life. It's how I
Yeah.
eat. Blueberries and cold brew coffee all the way.
Yeah, so it's like if you don't mind not having the kitchen, or maybe there is a kitchen, but like not necessarily having like the private kitchen, right? It's nice to have a private room, have the constant Wi-Fi, and as you mentioned, the instant community, because then, yeah, you don't have to like build that up. And I am building a course to help women how to make connections without using co-lives, but like co-lives are great as well if you're wanting to be around like-minded people that are also working remotely, that are in that same area, and is an avenue that you can use that is built in for you, which is nice when it's available.
Yeah, and if there's a kitchen there, I think there's a benefit to that. No surprise to anyone
Yeah.
that knows me or anyone watching. We are not a chef over here. We do not cook. When we cook, it is very, very minimal. I am the one responsible for wine and making sure everyone's wine glass is full and the conversation's great. But what I see is like the kitchen always becomes a communal space, and it's a great way to just kind of talk. And then also there are some people, like I know you, like love like cooking and sharing experiences. And like a lot of my friends, like shocking, a lot of my friends do like to cook and they love to like share their food and stuff like that. But even as you meet people,
Self-preservation. So you find people that can
absolutely.
cook.
Absolutely. But then you also, it's a good way to talk to people. And if some people are passionate about cooking, it's kind of like the childhood question. It's like you get to see them light up, and not in this
Mhm.
professional sense or, this. It's just something that like brings them joy. And that's a really cool experience to have with some people who are strangers or some that become friends.
Yeah. And along that line, how has it been maintaining the connections as you've been traveling? Like, what are some methods or strategies that you've used to be able to continue some of those good connections that you want to incorporate into your life?
Great question. I think I got a dose of this by moving away from Atlanta into Chicago. And I think all relationships are relationships. Friendships are
Mhm.
relationships. If you're with a significant other, that is a relationship. All of them take effort and work. So, like, if you want a relationship to last, you have to be willing to put in effort and realize there's sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes it's 80-20. We all have stuff going on in our life and stuff like that. So, don't have the mindset of, oh, I haven't heard from this person in a while. Why aren't they calling me and stuff like that? If you have that thought, pick up the phone, FaceTime them, call them. I
Mhm.
annoyingly FaceTime my friends all the time, even the ones that hate it,
Yeah,
but
I get
I
those
enjoy it.
random.
I'm just like, you get one of my childhood best friends, Yesenia, gets them all the time. And it's just one of those things. I'm also a component. There's good to bad in social media and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about it only in like a connection standpoint. For
Mhm.
me, like Instagram, I think is a beautiful thing because it's a way to stay connected with people, even if they're loose or close connections, to know what's going on in their life and not feeling like that gap. Someone can post a story and you're just like, oh my God, I love this, or this is so much energy, or they just like, post
Yeah.
something and you're just like, you know what? I saw you post this. Like, I even got a message literally yesterday from a friend of a friend who was just like, me and my wife are down in Costa Rica and you came up in conversation and we just think you're amazing and stuff. And and
Mhm.
I've sent that message to people like when something pops up and I see them and I'm just like, you know what? I think you're awesome and I just want you to know that and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so to me, those are the two things of how I keep connection is if we connect on social media and I see something, I'm always just like, if it's in my head, I'm going to tell it to you, especially if
Mhm.
it's something, and really only if it's something that I think is going to have a positive thing. If I see you're putting an effort into your business, I'm going to tell you that I love to see it and like keep it up and do good work. And then if I'm thinking of you or I'm missing you, you're getting a text, you're getting a call and stuff like that so that yes, we all have hectic lives, but you're still a person in my life and I want you to know that.
Yeah. I appreciate the dog memes and reels. So
Yes. You will get a lot of Instagram reels from me.
yeah,
That lets
those
you
are
know what
great.
level of friendship you're on is how many I send you in a row with no shame.
They're great. Thank you. This has been really great chatting with you. I've loved all of our conversations, and I want to close off with some questions that I ask all of my guests again, because you have a wealth of knowledge in all these areas. So I just want to get your perspective in terms of What one question would you have asked your younger self earlier at the start of your journey? Like what one question did you wish, man, I wish I should have like spent some time really focusing on that sooner rather than later?
I don't know if it would be a question. It would probably be more of a statement. And it's more, know your gut is right. Like, I'm
Mhm.
one of those. I know I'm very fortunate. I've known who I am and I have a lot of confidence in that. But I think we all have those moments in life where we're just like, sometimes you're just like, wait, is my gut off? Or like, this isn't the social norm. So maybe or not. And it would be more so not a question, but just reinforcing knowing that you got this and your gut is right.
Yeah, I do appreciate that you've got this statement because that's
You
that
got this
pushed
and
me
lean
through.
in.
Yeah, those are
Yes.
two things I still use today. And what is one last tip that you would tell women who are considering traveling solo for the first time but are a bit hesitant? What is the advice that you would give them?
I would say I mentioned it earlier. I'm a cannonball lifestyle into this. If that is not your speed and that is okay, and it's probably most people's not speed, do a co living. Go somewhere for a month. You can do anything for a month. A month flies by very, very quickly and stuff like that. Go for a month, test it out, see how it feels. Having a co living will give you a sense of having instant friends and figuring out how it feels to connect with people that you don't know but are in a shared space without feeling very isolated. And there's so many out there. Like, if you literally, wherever you're planning to travel, type in that country or city in co-living and kind of pick the one that feels right and just give it a chance. Because here's the thing is if you do it and you don't like it, it's done. And if you do like it, you now have experience to continue to lean in. I think when you and I first started this, and, some people are like, well, what if you don't like it? Or what if it only goes for 3 months? And I was like, I've built my life to this point. I can always do it again. Same with
Mhm.
this. If you're curious about like solo traveling, give yourself a set amount of time, just lean in, do it. If you love it, lean in further and explore. And if you don't, and you're the type of person you're like, I like my 10-day vacations or my long weekends, and that's
Yeah.
what gives me joy. Own that and enjoy that and like do what's true to you in that type of solo travel.
Yeah, exactly. That's beautiful because it takes the pressure off. Like, it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. You don't have to love it either, right?
No.
But at least the experience has shown you that whether you liked it or not, like, it's at least given you that taste, and then you can do with that information what you want to do with it. And again, like with this company that Travel Not to Escape, it's like I'm specifically focused on women who want to use solo travel to change their lives, but sometimes you don't want a solo travel to change your life. You just want to go on a vacation and go on a resort, and that is also okay. But it's being intentional in what it is
Yes.
that you're looking for. And I think that's the thing is like set that intention to go forever long. And when you're doing it, be intentional in the actions that you're putting in, lean in. And I love that advice. Thank you. So I am going to close off our interview with a question about play. So we know how you used to play when you were a child. How is play part of your life currently? What do you do in your life that feels like play?
I think this lifestyle feels like play to me in such a good way. When I was coming here, I'm currently in Sicily, Italy, and a friend, he was asking me, he's like, and I had a couple more trips planned before this and all of that. And he's like, which one are you most excited for? And I was like, I think just like Italy, because now play to me is just following my curiosity. Like, I'm an early riser. I love waking up, going to a cafe, having a coffee, wandering the streets and just seeing where the day takes me. And that's something that brings me so much joy. And sometimes I meet people or I stumble across events that are coming up. So sometimes
Mhm.
it's going out dancing somewhere, sometimes it's paragliding off of a mountain and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so that's what play is to me, is having that freedom to take a blank canvas when you're somewhere and just explore and find what happens. That like feeds my soul, my curiosity, and what I get the most joy out of right now.
Yay, that's so beautiful, and I love that that's still part of your life. So thank you so much for joining. How can people reach you if they want to find out more, if have questions on sales, follow your travels? What's the best way?
I think for anything travel, solo travel, anything like that, follow me on social media on Instagram, If you type in Meg Digital Nomad, I should be one of the first ones that come up, if not the first one. If you have very particular questions when it comes directly about just like sales in this space, always happy to hop on a call. Go to LinkedIn, type in Megan Williamson, and I should pop right up there as well. And I will answer on either one, even if you cross-reference some of this solo travel on LinkedIn or sales questions on Instagram. I'm here for it all. Always happy to have a conversation.
Perfect. Yeah, and definitely take her up on this because she has so much knowledge in both spaces. Thank you again. I'll share all of that in the show link, so take a look at that if you're interested. And thank you again for sharing your story of transformation, connection, and play with us today. I'm very grateful to have you as a guest, but also as a best friend. So thank you for joining on today. And thank you, navigators, for tuning in to today's episode with Megan. I hope her story resonated with you, and I will see you all in the next adventure. We chatted about some great connection tips in the episode, but if you're looking to learn the secret to how to make meaningful connections while you're solo traveling, save your seat for the free workshop I'll be hosting on January 24th. That's www.travelnotsescape.com/free class and also on the show notes. See you there. Until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and playing, and safe travels, navigators.